Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And I've been jumping through a lot of the melee DPS specializations because I wanted to give a review or a tier list based on the personal enjoyment and the longevity and the kind of engagement factors of a specialization moving into Shadowlands. So the initial tier lists I'm making before the tuning are more or less how long can I play this spec before I'm bored out of my mind or I start getting numb, right? Because that's very important for me. In Shadowlands, it seems like you're making a pretty long-term commitment to whatever you're picking. So if you pick, for me, if I pick one that I know I'm going to get bored of really quickly, and then I just have to keep playing it because re-rolling becomes too much of a hassle, I don't want that to happen, right? It's more important to me to have a spec that's really fun and awesome, and I feel like I'm never going to get bored of it. Enhancement Shaman received a bit of an overhaul, but it's more like a time traveling change. We're going back to like the pre-Legion, Warlords of Draenor, prior time, so they're getting rid of the Maelstrom bar. You're not gonna, it's still a builder spender, but it's slightly different, a little bit more unique to the Enhancement Shaman. They're bringing in a lot more of its hybrid capabilities, with Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt becoming more of a staple to the spec rather than just strictly being limited to Storm Strike and Lava Lash. You're gonna have a lot of dot management with Flame Shock and a couple of interesting AoE builds that are hopefully going to increase the competitive viability in Mythic Plus or for raiding on mostly just trash, right? So in PvP, my concerns at the moment for Enhancement Shaman is that I thought that Frostbrand, which is a weapon imbuement, which are coming back, was returned to Shaman, but I can't find it unless you see it here, and I don't. It doesn't look like Frostbrand made it back. It's only Wind Fury and it's only Flame Tongue. Now in PvE, yeah, you only care about Wind Fury and Flame Tongue, but in PvP, a lot of the time you would run Wind Fury and Frostbrand to get a bit of a slow. So I'm a bit disappointed to not see Frostbrand come back in that regard. And it's actually interesting to see a lot of mainly PvE players will complain about some spells being brought back and saying they're bloat, right? And basically, bloat in their definition is I don't press this in my rotation. It has no purpose. Get rid of it. So for warriors, that included things like intervene or spell reflect, which is interesting because those abilities in PvP, that's like the core of it. Like we don't care about pressing Mortal Strike really. It's I want to try and intervene in important crowd control or save my partner or something like that. So I'm hoping that Blizzard doesn't necessarily cave to that feedback that I'm seeing from a lot of mainly PvE players, is that these are just ability bloat. Because, okay, if you can't find a situation that you want to use it in PvE, then don't keybind it. It has its uses in PvP. I think it would also have its uses in PvP. What if you intervene the tank and soak a big hit that would have killed him, right? Maybe it's necrotic weak and they've stacked up and the tank can't be healed and you intervene a couple hits. I feel like there is still use for it there. You're just not being creative. So I'm hoping that they will leave those utility abilities. I'm hoping that Frostbrand actually makes it back into the toolkit because of that. Again, it was an imbuement that you really didn't use in PvE, but in PvP it had a lot of use. Anyway, let's get back to the meat and potatoes here of the spec. So what engages me for Enhancement Shaman is the Flame Shock management. So wanting to get Flame Shock on as many targets as possible and running this interesting build with Lashing Flames, where you want to be lava lashing the target with your Flame Shock as much as possible to enhance the damage of that Flame Shock. There's a lot more Flame Shock usage than in the past for Enhancement Shaman, and a lot of players are probably happy to see something like Fire Nova come back. This is mostly PvE players, but it's coming back in a much weaker iteration. If you remember, Warlords of Draenor enhancement was pretty powerful for trash pulls because of Fire Nova spam. It was also really strong in rated battlegrounds for the same reason with Fire Nova, getting tons of pressure out. Spreading Flame Shock is really difficult. I'm curious if they'll add a conduit or add any sort of effects, like maybe a legendary where your lava lash spreads your Flame Shock to another target, because right now getting Flame Shock on a lot of targets takes quite a long time. You can run the Necrolord Covenants and try and get some extra spread through that, but it's still not as smooth as just going Flame Shock, Lava Lash, spread, Flame Shock, although it might be their intention to not have you immediately spread, because the other change to the Flame Shock is that it's only hitting a limited number of targets rather than everything around the Flame Shock. It's up to 6. And I would imagine if you're running Necro Lords, you'll be going that Fire Nova to synergize with the Flame Shock applications. And if you're not going Necro Lord, you'll likely run Hailstorm, which then makes your Frost Shock hit multiple targets as you stack up Maelstrom over time. So these are both kind of AoE talents to increase your viability for Mythic Plus. They'll likely be good damage output in rated battlegrounds. But as far as their uses in PvP, it's yet to be seen. It really depends on the tuning of how much damage they actually do, because you in 3v3 arena, I don't know if that's enough targets to value them over a single target hit, or resetting your Flame Shock in case it gets dispelled to put up another one to buff the single target damage of it. So it's likely that your Cycle of Elements ends up being a PvP talent. Hailstorm would be your go-to for AoE and PvE if you weren't running Necrolord, and then Necrolord likely with Fire Nova. So there will be access to all of them depending on what Covenant you decide to go to. And talking about Covenants, some of the Covenant abilities are a little bit strange to use. The Vesper Totem seems like the most straightforward. I don't have access to it right now because I wiped the beta. Basically, you would just put a totem on the ground, and then your next 3 damaging attacks will cause the totem to blow up for extra damage, right? But the totem is really easy to kill. So in PvP, it's going to just be about switch to the Vesper Totem and snipe it out. I really think with Enhancement Shaman, and I'm just talking about PvP right now. In PvE, Vesper Totem, fine. You don't have to worry about the trash mob tab targeting your Vesper Totem and killing it, right? You're getting insane value. It's really crazy. Kyrian looks like a solid pick. And you could make it work in PvP, but the drawback is, yet again, that the Vesper Totem can be killed. If we look at Venthyr, they get Chain Harvest, which is super powered Chain Lightning, and it works with your Maelstrom, which is awesome. So this one also has the ability to be used as a heal. The Vesper Totem can as well. It'll radiate healing. I like that because you got a bit of a choice in your Covenant abilities. Again, going back to the enhancement hybrid's nature, you can use Chain Harvest to heal your whole team for an extra bit, or you could use it to do damage to people. Probably going to be damage more often than not, especially in dungeons. Or in raids. I can't imagine you'd ever be using it for healing. And then the Necrolord one is a little bit more awkward to use, where you shoot out a blast and then you apply Flame Shock with your Lightning Bolt, and you can try and synergize it with Fire Nova. I feel like it's going to just be a numbers game. If it doesn't compete directly, then you won't run it, and you probably won't play Fire Nova. You'll just play Hailstorm. So Necrolord is a bit wonky for me. And then Night Fae as well. It's a channeled, I think it's like Fae Infusion. You stop attacking and you channel. Now the downside of that with Druid with Convoke the Spirits is that you couldn't move and do it. So to me as a melee DPS, when you just start channeling something, I guess Fists of Fury would be the best example of it, but you can't kick Fists of Fury. I imagine you'll be able to kick the Fae version for Enhancement Shaman. It just feels really weird, and you've already got so many things as maintenance, which is great for me because I like that like kind of high stress. Like I've got my procs going on. Do I want to be using my Crash Lightning to buff up my Chain Lightning? I got a Storm Strike proc, but I need to get my Flame Shock back up, and I've still got Storm Strike procs on my Lava Lashes on cooldown. Oh no, I got my Maelstrom stacked up, which fortunately goes to 10, so if you're in that situation, you can afford to use some other globals to get rid of some of your procs. But generally speaking, it's a nice little, if you like micromanagement in terms of buff up time and trying to maximize that, Enhancement Shaman has a lot of it returning back to its old iterations, so it's got a lot of solid gameplay. Some of the problems right now, at least for me with Enhancement Shaman, is that you can run builds that will buff up your Wind Fury for yourself but not for your team, so you're not really bringing it. I mean, maybe in a raid when it affects so many players, it will have an impact depending on how much melee DPS you're bringing in, but it's only a 10% chance to instantly attack again. So this could maybe have some value playing with two-handed classes like warriors. I would really like to see Wind Fury get stronger. Otherwise, in PvE, things usually come down to who does the most damage, who does the most healing, who has the most immunity / cheat deaths, and Enhancement Shaman has a hard time getting to that point because it doesn't have any cheat deaths. You could run Night Fae and run the Seed Soul Conduits to try and get a little bit of a battle res from that, but the niche of the Shaman was bringing the totems that buffed up the group, and then you could build a group around the Shaman, like build a Wind Fury group that players did that in Classic WoW for leveling, and you'd bring a Shaman just for Wind Fury Totem and bring warriors, and other teams brought mages and warlocks and have classes synergize together, which was really awesome. So my hopes are that Wind Fury becomes more potent than it currently is. because right now it's more or less just a novelty, and unless the tuning goes a certain way, it's probably something that you won't spec for. Now more so focusing on PvP. Elemental Blast again works with Maelstrom power, so you'll be able to get instant Elemental Blasts. Ascendance is still in the talent tree, so if you go back to, you remember Mists of Pandaria, Enhancement Shaman, where you just LE Blast, pop Ascendance, go for a big Storm Strike hit right after that. That could come back depending on how much damage they actually do, right? And we have to wait for the tuning, a little bit more future testing to know if that's going to happen. But I could see Enhancement Shaman builds going for Ascendance and Elemental Blast, and be running the conduits where you can, or a legendary effect where you can get a chance to activate Ascendance, and then going for an LE Blast combo. I could see this being great for burst damage overall. But other than that, not too much changes. Some of the totems got extra health instead of 5 health on the PvP talents. It would be nice to see the Vesper totem also get a little bit of a health increase. So it's not just instantly killed in PvP, as that's likely going to be the go-to covenant at the moment. Other than that, we're not seeing any real new additions to honor talents for Enhancement Shaman, so unfortunately nothing new and exciting there. We talked about weapon imbuements. We talked about the Maelstrom system here. So when you use Storm Strike, you get stacks here, and then you can use them on healing. So if you wanted to use a healing surge, you could, or Chain Lightning. Chain Heal is a bit odd. We get Chain Heal back. So maybe in an emergency situation, you pop one of those out onto the raid or in a dungeon. But in PvP, I can almost imagine that you would always be using Healing Surge. There's no honor talents for enhancement that work with Chain Lightning, whereas you can go Swelling Waves if you want to get an extra little big heal on yourself. It seems like their intentions are to bring most melee into a place where you are hitting 5 to 6 target cleave rather than hitting everything, which brings them all in line, and then add a bit of ramp for all of them. So they're almost all the same in a sense in terms of their potential AoE output, but I still think, unfortunately, it's just going to come down to one of them does it a little bit faster, or one of them has a higher maintained peak, and then that's the spec you stack in Mythic Plus. So, but Enhancement Shaman does have a good shot at being close to that, so maybe you won't be stuck in LFG for a Mythic Plus dungeon all day because of that, with the return of Hailstorm and potentially Fire Nova builds. So you still have a shot there. In PvP, what are some of the downsides of the spec? In Battle for Azeroth, you were incredibly squishy, right, and easy to kill. So you're still pretty. You didn't receive anything in terms of personal durability, which I think I'm okay with on Enhancement Shaman being a bit more fragile. I'm just hoping in PvP that we get that punch back, with the Elemental Blast, the Ascendance combo, kind of be that almighty force that Enhancement Shaman used to be known for, rather than kind of this, I'm hitting you and I'll kill you after a little while. They're just a little bit dull in PvP for Battle for Azeroth. There's no Doom Winds punch that they had in Legion. So I'm really hoping in PvP the LE Blast Ascendance build makes a return. Maybe see some sort of conduits that are focused on upping their single target burst potential to make that possible as an option. Other than that, I think Enhancement Shaman is a spec that I could have fun for a very long time, because it has great debuff management, keeping flame shocks up on multiple targets, purge utility, tremor totem to remove fears for the team, bloodlust honor talent synergies to try and buff up the team. You have crowd control with Hex, earthbind totem, mobility with Ghost Wolf, still like solid defenses with astral shift. So you've got the whole kit basically. And then the engaging factor is juggling all of the buffs at the same time while you're in combat, deciding whether or not you want a Maelstrom to heal, Maelstrom weapon to heal, or Maelstrom weapon to do damage. Do you want it to do single target? Do you want to do it AoE? Do you want to wait until you can buff it up? There's a lot of decision making to make constantly on the fly, and that's something that engages me as a player. So if that's something that engages you, I think Enhancement Shaman is likely to be a lot of fun. And then it's basically just going to come down to tuning as to whether or not it gets us an invite, right, to a Mythic Plus. But it seems like they care about it, right? And it seems like they're trying to get all the melee in a similar bucket where they're only hitting 5 to 6 targets with their cleave, maybe 3 to 6 targets. Keep them all about the same, so none of them scale dramatically above the other ones, so that everybody has a chance to compete. So I think Enhancement Shaman is sitting right now in a good spot. And then as we move forward and we get past the tuning phase, it could also be competitive on top of being fun. So that's going to be it here for my Enhancement Shaman review. I hope that it brought some information to light to you in terms of your decision making for Shadowlands. If you liked the video, please leave a like and a comment down below if you would like me to talk about Enhancement Shaman more, or what you're most excited about for the Enhancement Shaman moving forward into Shadowlands. Please subscribe to the channel, as it does help me out immensely, and it's absolutely free. Not making you do it, I'm just recommending you do it, and because I really would like to help. So we'll see you in the next video.